Hi fellow classmates, my name is Tina Radasta, and in this video I am doing a summary of Chapter 7 from Sidman's Coercion and Fallout. This chapter is about escape routes, and Sidman begins this chapter by telling us that in our daily lives, pretty much every day, we experience shocks that cause us to find a way to escape those shocks. Sidman breaks down this chapter into two sections, tuning out and dropping out. So first we're going to look at tuning out. How many of you tune out when your spouse or your kids are rambling on about something? Did you realize that that was an escape behavior? Sidman tells us that we tune out whatever displeases us. He also tells us that this escape behavior could become a habit. What about escaping from a task you don't particularly care for, like laundry for me, or cleaning, or a dreaded assignment? Of course, not in this course, Dr. Francis. We don't escape from our assignments. They're not dreaded. Do you escape to a good book, a movie, a run? I'm sure we all do this from time to time. Honestly, I never thought of it as an escape behavior, but once I do, that's exactly what it is. Tuning out these things is no biggie, but when we start to tune out danger and its signals, well, that's when we have a problem, right? Because if we don't pay attention to danger or its signals, we could be putting ourselves or others in harm's way. So Sidman says tuning out danger and its signals is not adaptive. As with any other behavior, we need to look at the consequences for why we tune out. Sidman does point out that we need to first look at the immediate consequences instead of the eventual ones. Tuning out does make the task or event go away for a bit, but it truly doesn't disappear like that laundry that I'm avoiding or I'm escaping. It's still there. Sidman gives three different ways of handling, so to speak, tuning out. Crisis management, let John do it, or do nothing. Let's look at crisis management first. With this, we tune out something until we can get to it later. We use our management skills to attack each task via event one at a time. The issue with this method is we are constantly under coercion to tune out or to escape, handle it at a later date, while we're tuning out something else in order to handle this one at a later date. So Sidman tells us this is when we start to get ulcers and heart attacks, so we break down because there isn't an end in sight for these things that we've tuned out because we just keep tuning out and delaying to a later time. Now let's look at let John do it. That one's better known as delegating, right? We all have probably delegated at some point in our lives. The issue here is we tune out to escape an unfavorable task, and then someone else ends up doing it, or we assign it to someone else to do it. We become used to this and continue to tune out things that we want nothing to do with, which is eventually leading to self-defeat. Now, do nothing. That's a popular way to tune out or escape. Most times is because we don't know what to do. In the case of the possible nuclear holocaust, which Sidman talks a lot about in this chapter. The leaders of the world do nothing because they have no experience with this yet, and having had experience would mean we're all dead, which isn't the best case scenario either. So for this, I'm going to quote Sidman. He said, "The fact of behavior, consequences that come quickly, influence us more strongly than delayed consequences, justifies a pessimistic forecast. The likelihood that the human species will survive is not great." Well, dang, that wasn't pleasant to read, was it? On that note, let's move on to dropping out, the next section of this chapter. Dropping out is close to tuning out, but here we drop out, we get out, we break out. He tells us this is a method of escape that is non-productive. It not only does the individual lose out, but so does society when they're not participating. The common component in all kinds of dropping out, which I'm going to mention momentarily, is negative reinforcement. Sidman breaks this chapter up into 5 topics: dropping out of school, dropping out of family, dropping out of religion, dropping out of society, and then finally suicide, the ultimate dropping out. So let's look at dropping out of school. Negative reinforcement is the primary reasons for students dropping out of school. We've talked about this Sidman's talked about this in previous chapters about how coercion and negative reinforcement coercion is used lots in school by teachers and faculty. They do poorly, the students do poorly, and teachers give them more work to remediate them thinking that they're helping, but then that's a punishment because the students having to do more work. Teachers put big red X's on the papers. They speak to them in exasperation of, oh, how many times am I going to have to explain this? They call on them knowing they can't answer the question, place them either at the back of the room, away from everyone, basically out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, or front and center where they can keep an eye on them. These coercion tactics, this negative reinforcement, pushes the student further and further away until they're rarely or not at all attending school. And then if the students do remain in school, they tune out or escape via disruptions or aggression, which sometimes can get them expelled, which is an escape, right? Students aren't the only ones dropping out of school, however. Teachers are too. These coercion methods are harming the entire school system from top to bottom, in my opinion. Educational leaders need to train teachers in non-coercive instructional techniques, is what Sidman tells us. He says that this will help the students receive their desired standards. This benefits both the student and the teacher. Shoot, in my eyes, it benefits society as a whole. Next, Sidman discusses dropping out of family. Sadly, there are a lot of children out there who receive little to no positive reinforcement from their families, and punishment is what they mainly live with. I volunteer as a guardian ad litem working with children in the foster care system, and I see that a lot, sadly. Anyway, this leads them to tuning out and eventually dropping out of their family. They move far away, whether it's for college or work or a spouse or because they got married. Some even teenagers will get pregnant in order to move out and marry someone, or they marry someone that isn't right for them just so they can get out of the house. They escape the coercion they've had to live with their whole lives. Next, dropping out of religion. Religion comes with strings, doing as the church says. Makes the church coercive, by saying if you do this or you don't do that, you won't get to heaven or experience the afterlife. So by doing these things or not doing these things, we're escaping the dangers of being able to go to heaven or experience the afterlife. And some people drop out they keep their beliefs, but they drop out of the church or going to church to not have to continuously hear this. Next, Sidman talks about dropping out of society. He tells us that the two ends of this escape method are the flower children of the 60s and the terrorists of today, and many others in between. But both of these are escaping society, the flower children and the terrorists, one with peace and love and the other with contempt and death. Reading this section actually made me a little sad. As Sidman pointed out, a lot of dropouts from society are those who never really were accepted by society to begin with. So did they drop out, or did we give them a little push and push them out? He also tells us that those dropping out of society may be escaping from coercion, from abuse, from disadvantaged or non-supportive communities, drugs. Lastly, Sidman talks about the extreme dropping out, suicide. In this case, the person literally drops out of life. It's the ultimate escape. For this, like the nuclear holocaust, which was discussed earlier, it can only happen once. So there's no way to say whether the consequence was a reinforcer or not. One thing I had not thought of is that Sidman tells us suicide itself is a form of coercion. He says that sometimes suicide is used as a way to make others sit up and take notice, a way to make the others do something that the person who committed suicide wanted done, or maybe it's a way to punish others. No matter the reason, suicide does become a punishing shock to those left behind. Sidman says in order to solve this ultimate dropout, we have to recognize the existence of coercive pressures in the world. On that note, I have to add that if you are feeling like suicide's the answer, please reach out for help. Please. It's not the answer, and you'll never know that it's not if you're no longer here to learn that. So anyway, to wrap up, my question for you is, what shocks do you experience daily that you didn't realize you were trying to escape until you read this chapter? So again, what shocks do you experience daily that you didn't realize you were trying to escape until you read this chapter? So I hope you enjoyed my summary, and I look forward to reading your post on it. Have a great day. Bye.